Here, it's all about being positive, and a lot of goalies will want to look as though they want to come and get back on the line, but then other goalies stay back and be positive by creeping out and trying to trick the player. But
it's a huge thing, isn't it? Like positioning sets up the rest of the play, so it's the ability of wanting to go and affect play. So I think a lot of people want to look as if they want to affect play, but they don't really want to. So that's where you get them starting a bit higher, they'll drop in. Whereas like what we're trying to promote is be in a position where you can go and commit and be brave enough to make that decision, isn't it? And be positive.
Crossing's a massive thing, is about the mentality side. You've got to be positive. A lot of guys just don't want to get involved because it's the risk to rewards. And for us, crossing is a goalkeeper. Anybody can save shots, anybody can kick the ball, but crossing, not everybody can do it. It takes timing, technique, positioning, all these parts, athleticism, speed.
I think there's another massive one that people don't realise is like visual awareness as well. Knowing your surroundings. Like people think if you're going to go and affect the player, you've made your mind up, you're going to catch a cross before you've even left, but things change because you've got to have the ability to see the bigger picture. And people think you've got to have this tunnel vision, but really the ones who are exceptional, like Lee through his career was exceptional at crossing. But then when you watch his clips, he's rarely hit, and that's something we talk about a lot.
Avoiding contact, isn't it?
It's about being really smart when you're in crossing, trying to take crosses. It's about avoiding contact. Can you find little gaps to go and take it? Can you go and take it off people's heads? Can you beat people to the ball first?
You also got a split second in crossing. I think that's why a lot of people don't want to get involved. It's a lot easier to stay and not get involved, but you might have half a second to decide the pace of the ball. If it's outswing, well, you obviously know if it's an outswing or in-swinger. You've obviously got to take in consideration the wind. Today's a windy day, so for us this is a perfect day to do crossing. If you can catch a ball in the wind, when you go into normal weather, it's a lot easier.
You make a massive point in terms of like, especially in windy days, is not going too early. If you commit too early, you're knackered. So we're going to start with a little bit of higher and wider crosses. We'll start with some dead balls, and it'll be either a right foot outswinger, left foot in-swinger. And what you'll notice is, have a look at Lee's position, how it changes depending on what foot Owen's going to use. Pat's going to be in there as pressure, so visual distraction and a bit of pressure for the goalkeeper. So you're trying to replicate what you're going to come against on match day. So on there, so Lee stayed, because obviously Pat's going to beat into the ball, so he can't go and affect it. So his reaction times is from when Pat's going to touch it or might touch it. So he's got to stay a little deeper. Your reaction time becomes where Pat is to the goal, as opposed to the reaction time from the cross coming. So there, so like that. Another example, reaction time is from Pat's last touch. So there, great example is, because Pat's cutting across him, he can't go, he cannot go, he's got to stay. If he goes and Pat gets a nick, he's beat him so easily. So again, you get a lot of decision making. So whether you go or whether you stay, but the emphasis is, can you affect play is the biggest thing. But it's recognising situations when you can and when you shouldn't.
Crossing is, I think there's about 10 different aspects going to crossing. You've got your confidence, obviously, your timing, your technique, but decision making and the communication. Telling your defenders if they want them higher, a lot of goalies want them closer to them so the goalie doesn't take responsibility, but a lot of goalies would want them higher so they've got that space to go into. But of course, communication's massive. It's if he shouts for it and it's the wrong shout, the defender might leave it, and then the striker scores, and then that's your fault, and you get that is your fault because a defender could have cleared it, you've told him to leave it, and that's the ones that will go down as the goalie's fault, and that's the type of thing that gets you dropped. They lose confidence in you, so it's such an important thing. But crossing's such a massive range of different attributes. It was always the best part of my game from 6 years old, 7 years old. I used to love coming out and taking balls above people's head, and I think I've never seen anybody so similar to me as Pat, but I think he's more complete really, and his crossing, left and right foot taken off, he's exceptional. His feet are so fast, his spring's amazing. You just don't see goalkeepers like that. I think Pat could be a goalkeeper that hasn't been seen really. That's a perfect ball. There. Brilliant touch in it, Pat, but what'd you do? Yeah? Oh, so you're happy with it? I think Pat there, I think he's that good. I'd expect him to, if you want to come in, it was a great touch over his head, but I think there, the ball came here, Pat went here and touched it there, whereas I think just a little bit there and then attack it, you never know until it's obviously a game. But for him, I'd expect him to come around the back and attack it rather than going straight out. And that's a lot of goalies, Pat doesn't, but a lot of goalies will get caught, especially with an in-swinger, by taking the first step there, and then the wind or anything could, misjudgment takes it in. So it's just about waiting, and your first step could be there to go and attack it, rather than going there to have to go back. But obviously it's a great touch that from Pat. He's excellent at getting them little flicks, but I just thought from looking at it, obviously the wind kills him. It's so difficult to make the right decision in this weather. But that was like a punch. It was like a flick away, like the player coming in back post, and it could have been a brilliant touch away from him. But for me, I just think if he just came around the back, it could have made. I think obviously in terms of positioning, if Owen comes in there on his left foot, he shouldn't score, but he could score. Right foot, so that's when Pat would have to go treat it more like a shot. But when it's outswinger, that's when Pat can come out because the angle's narrower and it's going to be a lot wider, sorry. The angle's wider and it's going to be a lot harder for him to score from there, so he can take a more attacking position. Left foot, in swinger, or it could be a shot, so you've got to be prepared for that. And if you get beat, if Owen takes a touch inside with his left and puts it near your post, it goes down as your fault again. So you've got to be positive, but you've also got to be realistic and realise that if they do score from this angle, it does happen. So and it could go down as your fault. And crossing's decision making. I think crossing is confidence. It's decision making. So there, he's knew that it's going to come over the defender's head. The defender wasn't going to win it, and he's got in front of the striker. Sean might put a bit more pressure on, but it's a brilliant take. So there, if you see there, Pat, he made the step out. I don't think he's going to save it anyway if he stays on his line, but he might have shouted, the defender might have left it, and Sean's headed it in. So I think he's got to come back on the line. Of course, the delivery from Owen, it's probably, I would say, Premier League level. I think a lot of Premier League players won't hit a ball as well as him, so it's the hardest of conditions. And I've seen too many coaching sessions and crossing sessions where just float it up, goalie takes it. For me, that's kids training. I learnt nothing. I learnt nothing in crossing training. I learnt nothing in training in general, really. But in crossing training, no one ever taught how you do, what you do. But for us, you have to make mistakes and learn from them. Mine would have been the goalie coach out there, 50, 60-year-old or whatever, but just pinging balls in, like backspin, perfect, no movement, no curl, and it just gets you into a false sense of security. Whereas I think everything should be like that. That's a ball you get in a game, whipped in with pace. You've got a decision to make, and crossing is that. Very rarely in a game would you get a cross into the box, float it in, and you can go and take it cleanly with the right technique. And I think it's, like I say, it's for kids. That's kids type of shit. Punching's a massive part. It's not something I worked on in my career. A good catch that. But it's not something I ever worked on. But it's especially the higher level you go up, when it's an in-swinger, it's more pace, and sometimes catching's just not an option. I've had times when I've played and not at the top level, but it's the one where the ball comes in with pace. I've punched it, and for a slight second I've thought, should I've caught it? And then somebody's come and smashed us. So of course it was the right decision. But I think it's so important to practice punching. Coaches and fans have this thing where if you can get two hands to the ball, you should catch it. It's unbelievable, it's ridiculous. Look at if you see the pace now that Owen's putting these balls in. Oh, could have been perfect. If you've seen the pace, like that one there, I want Pat to go and drop it. If he catches that, it's like one of the best catches you'll ever see. So if he did that, well done. There. It was one where he's caught it a bit lower. That's a chance where the player could come in. I would say I'd rather him start back and go forward and get the punch rather than go back and let it drop into his hands. There's perfect one. That was perfect one for a punch. But as well, what you see a lot of the top goalies that love to do the one hand. So there's pace on the ball's coming across them, and it's the hardest thing to do. The ball with pace, and you meeting it with a one-handed punch to give it that. Whereas what we do is just take your hands up late, and it's just a little nudge. It's a bit like the side volley, it's just that, and the punch is using the pace of the ball and directed into good areas. In there, lately I've saw two goalies, really high level, go for a one-handed punch. One of them, the ball hit there, dropped down, cost his team a goal. The ball goes out 40 yards for a throw-in. There was loads of pace on the ball. And another one who tried to do that instead of that, and the ball went 10 yards instead of 40 yards. So I just think these are the things that it's a big surface area. You're there, you take your hands up late, and it's just like a little nudge away. It's absolutely amazing to watch. Obviously, I'm against that one-handed punch, but it's timed absolutely perfectly. There is more chance of it mistiming it. There is more chance of mistiming it doing that, but when you have got exceptional timing, obviously you've got much more chance. But look at the distance he's got. He's got another 50 yards. That could be a counter-attack, that. There we go. Ridiculous, man. The main things are like your decision making, whether it's a catch or punch, waiting, don't go too early, and then whether it's one hand or two hand. But very rarely would I say, percentage wise, I would say 95% two hands, 5% one hand.